Rain had been tapping my courtroom windows since before sunrise, the kind of cold rain that makes old wood groan. I remember the weight of that file in my hand. Some mornings, paper feels heavier than grief. If you've ever felt trouble enter a room before a word was spoken, stay with me. I felt it that morning. I think you would have felt it too. I'm Judge Judy Moreno, and I've sat on that bench for 34 years, long enough to know when a day is ordinary, long enough to know when a day will follow me home. That morning followed me home. The heat pipes hissed under the floor like tired snakes. My clerk set fresh water at my elbow and said nothing. Even the bailiff moved softer than usual. Rain does that to people. It lowers their voices. The courtroom was nearly full before we began. A few reporters sat in the back, notepad covers damp from the weather. 2 nursing students whispered near the wall and then went still. An old man in a brown cap held his hat like prayer. I opened the file and saw the total at the top, $18,742.62. Not for theft, not for violence, for parking fines, late fees, towing, and storage. I read the pages twice because the number felt cruel. 24 tickets near the same hospital entrance, 3 towing charges, months of fees piled on fees like bricks on a chest. Paper can lie without saying one false word. It can tell you every date and still hide the truth. That's what I felt in my hands that morning. A neat stack of facts hiding something alive underneath. I looked toward the courtroom doors and waited. I've learned that doors tell the truth before mouths do. The way a person enters matters. The way they carry their trouble matters even more. When the bailiff called the name, the whole room shifted. Not loudly, just enough. Like the air itself had straightened its back. Then she walked in. Elena Cruz moved like someone trying not to take up space. Her coat was dark blue and too thin for that kind of rain. One cuff had been stitched by hand with white thread. The hem brushed worn shoes, polished past saving. She held her bag close against her ribs with both hands. The knuckles were red and rough, cracked at the bends. Laundry soap had dried the skin into little white lines. Her fingers looked like they had worked through winter for years. Her hair was pinned back in a careful twist that kept coming loose. Rain had curled a few silver strands against her cheek. There were soft hollows under her eyes, deep and purple, not makeup, not fashion, just lost sleep stacked high. But it was her posture I noticed most. She stood straight out of respect, not comfort. Her shoulders were set, yet I could see the tremble under them, like a bridge holding more weight than it should. When she looked up at me, she did not look angry. She looked ready to apologize for being there. That always tells me something. Shame and guilt are cousins, but they are not the same. Then the city's representative rose from the other table. Alexandra Price. Even before she spoke, money stood beside her like perfume. Her cream suit fit like it had been cut that morning. A gold watch flashed when she turned a page. Pearl earrings caught the light at her neck. Her nails were pale, neat, and still. She wasn't cruel in the way loud people are cruel. She was tidy about it. Her hair, her notes, her voice, her whole manner. Everything in her said numbers should win. She gave me dates, times, and printed images. She spoke with clean certainty. 24 parking violations near Mercy Children's Hospital. 3 tows, repeated non-payment, final balance due in full. She pointed to each document with a capped pen. Each page carried a photo of Elena's car. Each photo had a timestamp. Every line marched in order like soldiers. I listened without interrupting. That's part of my job. When people trust records more than people, they deserve a full hearing too. Cold systems still wear human faces. Then I turned to Elena. I asked the simplest question I know. Tell me what was happening in your life on those mornings. Her lips parted, then closed again. She swallowed once and looked at the photos. For a second, she touched the edge of the table. It looked like she needed to steady the room. Then she said very softly that her grandson was sick. His name was Nico. He was 8. He had leukemia, which is blood cancer, the kind that makes childhood feel too short even on good days. She told me her daughter, Nico's mother, had died the year before, a crash on the interstate in late spring. After that, Nico came to live with her. There was no one else steady enough. I glanced back at the photos and then at Elena's hands. I asked if she worked nights. She nodded before I finished the question. Hotel laundry, 6 nights a week, 11 at night to 5 in the morning. She would leave work, drive straight to the hospital, and meet Nico for treatment. Sometimes he had chemo before sunrise. That is poison used to kill cancer. It helps, but it hurts on the way through. She said those mornings were the worst. He would come out weak and gray with his small body folded inward. His legs shook after the medicine. Some days he could not make the long walk from the garage. I looked at the timestamps again. Most were between 4:47 and 5:12 in the morning. That pattern matters to me. Patterns usually mean a reason. I asked why she kept stopping at the front loading zone. She did not rush her answer. She looked ashamed of the answer before she spoke it. The hospital garage near that wing opened later than her arrival. The other garage was across the block and up a steep ramp. Valet parking cost $28. She made $15.50 an hour. On treatment days, that price felt like a door slamming shut. So she used the loading zone for quick drop-offs. That was wrong under the rules. She knew that. But Nico could not always stand on those mornings, let alone walk uphill in the rain. If you were sitting where I sat that day, what would you have thought then? Would you have stayed with the rule, or would you have looked one layer deeper? That is where the hardest truth usually waits. Elena told me she never left the car long on purpose. She ran Nico inside, got him signed in, then came back. But sometimes he threw up before she reached the doors. Sometimes he clung to her coat and begged her not to let go. The city had photos of her car at the curb. They did not have photos of the boy in her arms. They had minutes on a page. They did not have the weight of his body after treatment. I asked to see the photos again, one by one. That is when I noticed something the room had missed. In the back seat sat a small red blanket, folded badly, used often. I asked about the blanket. Elena stared at it as if she had forgotten it would be there. Then she said, Nico slept with that blanket every night after his mother died. He brought it to every treatment because hospitals scared him. Her voice grew thinner after that. She said one morning he threw up blood at the curb. Not much, but enough. Enough to make a grandmother forget every sign on every pole. She said he grabbed her neck and asked for his mother. Not a nurse, not a doctor, his mother. Then he asked if dying felt cold. No one moved when she said that. The room went still in a way I know too well. Even the reporters lowered their pens. Pain can silence people faster than any order. Alexandra Price stood again and returned to her notes. She spoke more gently this time, but still from the page. The city could not make choices based on emotion. Officers saw repeated parking. Repeated parking meant repeated tickets. I understood her point. Rules cannot bend every time sorrow appears. If they did, they would stop being rules. But rules without judgment become something hard and blind. I asked Elena one more question. Why didn't you ask the hospital for help with parking? She lowered her eyes. Then she said she did, twice. The first pass covered 3 visits. After that, the fund ran dry. The social worker tried to help, but there was a waiting list. By then, the tickets had already begun to pile. She had meant to fight the first few. Then Nico got pneumonia. Then her car was towed once while he was inside getting platelets. That is a blood part your body needs to stop bleeding. She missed work that day getting the car back. Then she missed pay. Then late fees hit. And once those fees start growing, they grow fast and mean. By the time she looked up, the number had become a wall. That is what debt does to tired people. It stops feeling like math. It starts feeling like weather. I leaned back and looked again at the city's stack. The file had not changed. But the room had. Now I needed to see whether the law had enough heart left inside it. I turned to Alexandra Price and asked a different kind of question. Did any officer note the reason for these stops? She shuffled the pages once, then again. At first, she said no. Then she found a small comment box on one photo. It read, "Woman carrying minor child." Nothing more, just that. I asked if that note triggered any review. She said the system processed violations automatically. The system, she told me, could not weigh hardship at the curb. That answer was honest. It was also the problem. I asked for every photo on the screen. The clerk pulled them up in order. Rain clicked against the window while we watched. The whole room leaned forward without meaning to. In the first images, Elena's old gray sedan sat crooked at the curb. Its left headlight was cloudy. The windshield held a hospital visitor tag curled at one corner. A child-stuffed fox lay beside the rear window. In another photo, taken before dawn, the car door stood open. Elena's body was half hidden by the frame. You could see one bent shoulder and one arm reaching inward, like she was lifting something small and precious out of darkness. Then came the image that changed everything. It was grainy, taken from farther back, but there she was, clear enough. One knee on wet pavement, coat spread under a child. Her hand was behind a small back. Her face was turned down. A paper basin sat beside them near the curb. Anybody with eyes could see that was not careless parking. I asked if the city had reviewed that image before today. Alexandra said it had been stored with the others. No special flag, no human follow-up, no call for mercy, no call for sense. Then I asked for hospital door camera footage from that same morning. Mercy had sent it after Elena's public defender requested it. The lights dimmed. The screen glowed blue across the courtroom benches. We saw the front doors burst open at 4:58. A nurse pushed a cart with a blue basin and towels. Elena rushed in carrying Nico against her shoulder. His blanket dragged from her elbow and soaked up rain. A security guard held the door with one arm. With the other, he lifted the car keys from Elena's open hand. He ran toward the curb himself. That told me all I needed to know. On the next clip, 10 minutes later, the same guard moved the sedan. Not far, just enough to clear the lane before an ambulance arrived. He parked it in the side lot and handed the keys back inside. I turned and looked at Alexandra Price. For the first time, she wasn't studying paper. She was watching the screen, and the screen was finally speaking a language numbers could not soften. What she saw was simple: a grandmother out of money, a sick child out of strength, and a city machine so busy counting minutes it forgot to count human need. I told the room that rules matter because people matter. The loading zone must stay open. Emergency lanes save lives. But that is exactly why context matters. The rule was made to protect a hospital entrance. It was not made to punish a woman carrying an 8-year-old child to chemo. If we forget that difference, we are not doing justice. We are just sorting pain into piles. Before I went further, I need to ask you something. How many times does a person have to suffer before a system finally sees them? And when it does not, whose failure is that? Theirs or ours? Alexandra straightened and gave one last defense. If the court excuses this balance, she said, others will expect the same. Officers cannot guess whose story is real. The city depends on equal enforcement. I nodded because that argument had weight. Then I answered it. That is why we have judges, not to erase rules, but to test them against facts. Equal enforcement does not mean equal blindness. A person in crisis is not the same as a person in contempt. When proof shows the difference, the law must respond. If it cannot respond, it has gone hollow. That was when Alexandra made the mistake people still talk about. Her voice sharpened. Her chin lifted a fraction. And she said, Judge Judy Moreno, this court is not a shelter for sad stories. No one gasped right away. Sometimes disrespect lands in silence first. Then it spreads through the room like heat. I felt it rise from the benches behind me. I have been insulted before. Age teaches you that. But some insults reveal more about a system than any file ever could. That one did. I folded my hands and let the silence do its work. Then I said I did not run a shelter. I ran a court. And a court that cannot tell the difference between abuse and need has failed its purpose. I reminded her that mercy is not chaos. Mercy is judgment used carefully. It looks at proof. It listens longer than a machine ever will. Then I asked the clerk to read the hospital letter aloud. It confirmed Nico's treatment times on every cited morning. It confirmed the emergency episode in the rain. And it confirmed Elena was listed as his sole guardian. By the time the clerk finished, Alexandra's papers had gone still. The room no longer belonged to the numbers. It belonged to the truth. Now it was time for the ruling. I picked up the gavel, but I did not strike it yet. Some moments need a second of air. Some people need one more breath before the weight falls. Elena stood frozen, fingers locked around her bag strap. I said the court found clear proof of medical hardship. I said the city had failed to review obvious warning signs. I said automated penalties cannot replace human judgment. Then I brought the gavel down once. The original tickets were set aside. The towing fees were wiped away. The storage fees were wiped away. Every late charge was dismissed in full. The remaining balance was zero, not reduced, not delayed, zero. The gavel sounded again after that, a short sound, but it moved through the room like thunder under floorboards. Even the rain seemed to pause and listen. Elena did not cry the way people do in movies. She did not cover her face. She did not collapse. She only stopped holding herself so tightly. Her shoulders dropped first. Then her mouth opened, but no words came out. She pressed her rough fingertips to her lips once, like she was checking whether she was still real. After a few seconds, she looked down at her own hands. I will never forget that. People look at their hands when life has used them up. They look again when someone finally lifts the weight. I asked her if she had eaten that morning. She blinked, surprised by the question. Then she shook her head. No, Your Honor, she whispered. So I told my clerk to bring the hospital family resource list. I also told her to call the social work office downstairs, not later. Right then, before Elena left my courtroom, I asked Elena to stay seated after the hearing. Not as a defendant, as a grandmother. I wanted someone from that office to help her apply for transport vouchers and parking relief. Then I looked at her and said something I meant with all my heart. You were not wrong to be scared. You were not weak for falling behind. You were carrying more than most people could see. She bowed her head, but not from shame this time. It was relief, the kind that leaves a person quiet because speech would waste it. The room understood. That was when a man stood up from the back row, tall, broad, security uniform. It was the hospital guard from the video. His name was Marcus Lane. He asked if he could speak. I allowed it. He said Elena had been coming there for months, always tired, always polite, never asking for more than a few minutes. Then his voice caught in his throat. He said she used to bring extra peanut butter crackers in her bag, not for herself, for other parents who got stuck there overnight after the cafe closed. He said one night she gave her own coat to a father sleeping in a chair. She walked out in the cold wearing only her work sweater. And when he tried to give the coat back, she smiled and kept walking. That is who she was, he said. If this story is reaching you somewhere quiet, let me ask you softly, how often do we pass by good people because they look worn out? How often do we mistake exhaustion for failure? I think about that more than I used to. Elena finally sat down, slow and careful, like her knees had remembered she was tired. Marcus lowered himself back into the gallery. Nobody clapped. It was too solemn for that. But faces changed. You could see it. The reporters were not writing about unpaid tickets anymore. They were writing about what we had all almost missed. 2 weeks later, the story left the courtroom and entered the city. A local station aired the security clip at 6:15 in the evening. By sunrise the next day, my clerk had 43 voice messages. By Friday, she had 217. Most were not for me. They were for Elena. People asked how to help without embarrassing her. That mattered to me. Dignity matters even inside kindness. The hospital social office told my chambers they received 312 parking pass donations. A tire shop offered 4 new tires for Elena's car. A grocery store sent gift cards worth $1,384. A church group raised bus fare for 10 other families, too. A school class mailed Nico 86 handwritten cards. One had a crooked fox drawn in orange marker. A retired teacher sent 3 chapter books and a note. She wrote, "For the waiting rooms and the brave days." A fund started online, small at first, then it grew. In 9 days, it reached $41,386. More than 1,000 people gave something. Mercy Children's Hospital reopened its emergency parking aid after public pressure. The city began reviewing older hospital entrance tickets by hand. Marcus Lane told my clerk 2 new signs went up near the curb. One pointed families toward after-hours help. 6 months passed before I saw Elena again. By then, winter had gone and spring had softened the block. Court had nearly ended for the day when the doors opened. I looked up and knew her before the bailiff did. She still moved carefully. Some habits stay. But the old fold in her shoulders was gone. She wore a green coat that actually fit and held warmth at the collar. Her shoes were still practical, still polished. But the leather was new enough to keep the rain out. Her hands were less raw. The cracks at the knuckles had healed into faint white maps. Her hair was pinned back again, only this time it stayed. A little silver still framed her face. Yet her face itself had changed. The skin around her eyes no longer looked braced for impact. And her eyes, that was the deepest change. The first time they had looked like windows after a storm. Now they looked open, not carefree, just open. Beside her stood Nico. I knew him from the photos before she said his name. He wore a red hooded sweatshirt and held that same stuffed fox under one arm. His hair was growing back in soft, dark curls. He had Elena's careful stillness, but not her old fear. Children tell the truth with their feet. His feet were not turned toward the door. They were turned toward the room. He carried a paper bag from a bakery downtown. Inside was a lemon loaf, still warm, and a thank you card. The card had his handwriting on the front. Some letters leaned the wrong way. I loved that. Elena told me the apartment mold had been fixed after the landlord saw the news. The fundraiser paid off her old fees and repaired the sedan. A woman from the hotel helped her move to day shift. Now she slept at night for the first time in almost a year. Then Nico spoke. He said he only missed one day of school that month. He said his blood counts looked good. Then he whispered that he could walk from the garage now. That small sentence nearly undid me. Not because it was dramatic, because it was ordinary. Ordinary is a miracle when a family has been living in survival. Marcus had come with them too. He stood by the door, smiling like a man embarrassed by joy. He had driven them there on his lunch break. Some kindnesses do not end when the camera leaves. Before they walked out, Elena placed the bakery bag on the clerk's desk. She said she could not repay what happened in that room, so she had started bringing crackers and coffee to the chemo floor twice a week. She wanted kindness to keep moving. I want to ask you something before I tell you what stayed with me. When someone in your town stumbles under a weight you cannot see, what do? Do you look away and trust the numbers? Or do you step closer and become part of the answer? That evening, after the hallway emptied, I sat alone for a while. The benches were still. The rain was gone. Only the old pipes spoke under the floor. People think this job is about deciding who wins. Some days it is. But the truer part is quieter than that. It is about refusing to let paperwork bury a living soul. A court cannot heal cancer. It cannot raise the dead. It cannot return the lost years people spend afraid. But it can stop one more harm from landing on a bowed back. I have seen angry men, false tears, practiced lies, and damage that never really leaves. I've also seen tired people stand 1 inch from breaking. And sometimes the only holy thing left is being careful with them. That is what the bench means to me now. We say justice is blind. I understand why people say it. But after all these years, I think justice should see more, not less. It should see the whole person, because the truth is this. Most people do not walk into court on the worst day of their lives by choice. They come because pain got counted before it got understood, and someone must still be human in the counting. So I turned off the lamp above my bench and sat in the dim room. I thought about Elena's hands. I thought about Nico learning to walk from the garage again. And I thanked God that truth had arrived before it was too late. The law saw her at last.